Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Business Insights room. Every Thursday, Team Sullivan and I, Maya Matsuoka, lead a discussion looking for insights, developments, and new opportunities for the business in Japan. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this room. Today, once again, we've got Colin Savage. And if you have listened to our previous podcasts, previous sessions, you already know that Colin has been here before once, and this is his second time. The first time we talked about why you and Japan need each other now. And today's topic is going to be, a continuation, in a sense, to the previous one. So a couple of weeks ago, Tim Sullivan and I talked with Colin about his story and how he and his wife tried to come back to Japan during the pandemic. And it didn't actually happen because of a lot of barriers, a lot of restrictions. But of course, Japan is opening to tourists and visitors as well at the moment. Still, there is that group of people, let's say foreigners, who have family in Japan. They want to come back, and I think that many of them are very eager to come. So today we're going to talk with Colin about that, and also hear why he and his family want to come back to Japan. I invite you to join the conversation at any time. So just let us know that you want to come up on stage and talk by raising your hand so that we can bring you up and so you can join the conversation. Colin.
Maya, that was an excellent introduction. You are a consummate professional. Well done.
Well, you make me laugh. Just thank you.
No, and I laugh because I'm sort of nervous because I have to follow your professional level. But I think I'll do my best. Wish me luck. So you're right. Maya, Tim, and I were talking about a couple weeks ago now. And that was sort of following on the earlier discussion that we had about, why Japan needs you, as Maya very well put or summarized. And what had happened at that time was, I'll be honest, I was feeling left out. So, and I'll explain. There's a lot of news, as we all see these days, about Japan's opening up and very slowly or not. All the rules and regulations that are still in place, how they are, helping, hindering, whatever, all of the different people that are either living in Japan now or wanting to come back. And I started noticing kind of like two very polar opposites popping up in some of these discussions. And on the one hand, we had those that are already in Japan, whether they are Japanese nationals or lovely non-Japanese folks like yourselves that have made Japan home. And then on the other hand, we had tourists. And so we had those that are in Japan a little bit anxious about, oh no, the floodgates are going to open. All of a sudden, I'm not going to have my pick and choice of whatever hotel I want to stay in. There's going to be throngs of people all over the place like there were before. And we kind of know that that's not the case. Like we know that there are some countries in particular that send more tourists to Japan than others, and those are having their own problems. So they're not really part of this opening up at the moment. But then on the other side, we had tourists, pure tourists, right? Now basically limited to groups, either through JTB or what other specific travel agencies that have been selected that were going to come into Japan. But the thing for me is I'm not either one of those. So I'm not purely going to Japan because I have an affinity for the food or I want to see, Universal Studios in Osaka or something else. But I'm also not a person coming back because I don't live there right now. So in the middle of it, there's this third group that I felt wasn't being really thought about. And that also kind of led to the things that Maya shared about, the struggles that I've had recently with something that should be very straightforward, which is getting a spouse visa to enter the country. For anyone who's listening, and very quickly, I lived in Japan for almost a decade. I've been married to a wonderful woman for more than 20 years from Japan. We have a couple kids that are, hold multiple passports and so on and so forth. But we had 2 attempts where we tried to go and get a spouse visa that should be really straightforward and very quick. And both of them were either denied, postponed, or canceled. And it kind of made me think like, well, why are we in this category that's one, being ignored? I'm guessing, right? Maybe there's other people on the call that want to speak and I'd love to hear it. Or this whole thing about, yes, we're going through a pandemic and we're kind of on the way out of it. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But given everything else that I hear about a lack of, significant immigration of certain people, a kind of a gap in skill sets and other things, Japan should be really opening up to this third group as well. And then, frankly, for a personal note, before I hand it back to Maya, Tim, and Timothy to add, like we haven't seen our family in Japan for 2 years now. And I know we can go through the tourist alley and whatever, but again, I'm not a tourist. So I'm kind of stuck in this like no man's land at the moment. And that's sort of where this discussion all popped up. Why come back to Japan? Well, I want to come back to Japan. I want to see my family. I want to, restart my career. I want to do all these things, but there seem to be hurdles being put in place. Back over to you, Tim, Timothy, and Maya.
Yes, that is really. Can I go in an unfortunate happening? But if it is just a happening, it would mean that it happened just to you, and it obviously has happened to many other people here in Japan or out of Japan as well. People who have family here and haven't been able to come back. So I believe that there are quite a few reasons for that, and by listing the reasons. I don't want to excuse or justify what has happened. But obviously, a lot of the reasons are political. A lot of the reasons are also, let's say, they have safety in mind, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But, in such situations, in times of crisis, because the pandemic was a crisis, actually, people don't tend to think very logically, or at least the majority of people. So there is that perception, that if you let people into the country from overseas, it's dangerous and probably, the infections would increase and so on, which actually is not true, but that's how the human mind works. So, yeah. And I'm sure that Timothy Langley will be able to chime in here for, and about the political reasons for what has happened during these 2 years. So, yeah, I don't know, Timothy, can you talk about this or can you talk at the moment?
Sure. I've got a little bit of background noise. So I'm sorry to hear about your plight. I hear lots of stories, much sadder, much more compelling than yours all the time. And they're just, when you're dealing with the Japanese bureaucracy, there is no empathy, right? Somebody months earlier had decided on a regime or guidelines or a plan to deal with something. And, certain people that just fall into that category. I mean, there's no thought that goes into it. It's just implementation of what a bunch of bureaucrats came up with. But I think the restrictions are falling very, very quickly, like water dripping from the icicles in the spring. It's coming very quickly because the Japanese government, I think it has been compelled to reach the conclusion because they don't reach that conclusion on their own very easily. But I think the United States is very concerned about Japan, about the value of the yen, the Japanese economy. It impacts the United States, and the United States has a lot of influence here. And I think they've just said, look, of all of the G7 countries, you are the outlier, and your tight restrictions are not doing you very well, and you're asking us to help you. Why don't you do a little bit of self-help, like, re-engaging the economy? So you've noticed over the last 5 weeks how quickly it's gone from, 2,000 visitors into the entry points a day to 5,000, 7,000. Now it's 20,000, right, per day. And it's very quickly going to be exceeding that. So I think, unfortunately, you have a bit of a track record. You've tried 2 or 3 times. And, going at it again, it seems to have, there must be something else going on there. You should have gotten that already.
Yeah, I agree, Timothy. Like, it's not, I hear what you're saying, and I feel for the plight of people that don't have even a tenth of the understanding that I would. I spent 7 years working in the Japanese government when I was there, and not to take anything away from those that worked in government but were in education, but I worked in international affairs and other things. So I know the path, and you're absolutely right. I'm sitting here going, well, do you go for the third strike? More importantly, and Maya, I think, alluded to this, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of standardization of what they want to do. So one of the things that I have always been a big, champion for the Japanese government's a hard thing to say, but I will say it, is that they will follow a process. They will not challenge the process. That is the way things are done. and this is how we're going to all be successful in our jobs. We follow what we're supposed to. But when it comes to things like, even today, just to make sure that I wasn't kind of overlooking something, I did about an hour's worth of research in English and in Japanese on pathways to getting spouse visas. If your spouse happens to live overseas and so on and so forth. And I looked at 4 different countries, including Japan, and none of them had anything that was similar. All of them were making different recommendations, apply directly to Japan, even if you're overseas, go through your local consulate, you have to go to this embassy. Some of them say you have to do a certificate of eligibility. Other of them say you don't. Some of them say that even if your spouse is overseas, it doesn't matter. In Canada, they say that it does, and you need a local guarantor. Like, it just seems to be a crapshoot. And I feel, and I'll round out my comment here by saying it makes me more confused, because on any given week, I get 2 or 3 phone calls from recruiters in Japan. Colin, have you ever considered coming back? We see you, it's unique. You've got a LinkedIn profile that's in Japanese. Would you ever think about doing it? We have this, we have that. We have a local company that's looking for people. We have a gaishike, a foreign company that's looking for people. And it's just, there's a disconnect, a real big one. And I think you hit the nail on the head, where they're not going to come and get out of it themselves. They need someone to push them to do it. And hopefully countries like the US that have a vested interest will help them get there. But I'm not sure what's going to happen this year, put it that way.
Well, I think that once the election for the upper house is open, no, it is over, sorry. And I'm sure that, I'm just stepping into the domain of Timothy here. So Timothy, please forgive me for doing this. But I'm sure that after the upper house election is over, the borders will open at a much faster pace for more nations, and also for people who have family here. So
Definitely.
Definitely. Oh, thank you. Yes. So, there is a little bit more left of this time when we actually need to be patient. And I know that a lot of people are actually, they have already, gotten beyond that, the limit of their patience, but still nothing has been lost completely. So, and I can see Yuka. Good morning, Yuka. Oh, to you, it is good evening. So thank you for coming up.
Hey, Maya, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey. Okay. So I thought that seems like I'm the only one who doesn't quite understand what Colin's real issue is. So let me ask you now, so that I don't get further confused. Hi, Colin. I think we've talked. Yeah, like you said, 2-3 weeks ago or so. I think I shared my digital nomadic life with you, I believe.
You did, yes.
Oh, okay, all right. So that's you, Colin. That's Colin. Okay,
yes,
great.
That's right.
Okay,
good to see you again.
yeah, good to speak with you. So with you again. Let me ask you this though. So your issue is you can come back, right? You can re-enter to Japan, but your issue is your wife does not have spousal visa. Is that right?
No. My wife is Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah. So I made you, but you raise a good point, Yuka, and I will really, I'll boil it down to the salient issue. I don't believe in skirting rules. I believe in following rules. And so I've had a number of people, and some of these have been recruitment firms and others, that have said, well, why don't you just come to Japan on a tourist visa, hang out here for a couple months, find what you need to do, and then transfer it over. And I don't want to do that. I want to make Japan my home. So I want to do it the right way. And the issue that we've had is I have not been able to secure a spouse visa despite 2 tries and being married for 20 years. Okay. Yeah, for me. It's for me. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. Maybe. Okay. So my understanding was the other way around. Okay. Then my question then, why you can't?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to. I know the first time I applied, it was suggested to me that I applied directly to the Immigration Services Agency of Japan from Canada, because this was late 2021, so we were still kind of in the pandemic pretty hard. And they said, no, put your application directly in there. Should be good to go. And I got a response back that said, well, you need a local guarantor. And I said, well, I've never had to have that problem before. I said, well, but your wife doesn't live in Japan. I said, oh, okay. But again, I've never had anyone tell me that before. Can you show me somewhere that states that this is a requirement? I had to dig around myself on their own website to find out where it's listed. And it's sort of like an option. It's not even a requirement. So I said, fine. So I left it. And then a little bit later on, early this year, when things kind of calmed down, I contacted the embassy here in Canada. And they said, no, apply to us. It'll be fine. And then I applied to them. And then the response back was, it's not really a good time now. We have a backlog of other things. And so it's like, sorry? It was a little confusing. So to Timothy's very important point, you start building up a file with the government where you've made a number of applications or whatnot. They refer to the file and they refer to the previous results. So I'm kind of sitting here going, well, okay, maybe I do wait it out and see what the election holds. And Timothy and Maya are right. The tables may turn. But if it's another 9 months or a year or whatever, like I'm already 2 years postponed in my return to Japan plans. So given that was a pandemic problem, but that's kind of the issue.
Oh,
So
okay.
I raised it that way. Yeah.
So it's not that then, is that a timing issue then?
It could be. Yeah. I think so. Like, that's a good point. Like, it could be, hey, we've got a tidal wave of other things coming. Like, this really isn't a priority if you're just sort of looking around to see what you can do. But I thought there would be merit in me following the rules. And with all the other support that I have, okay, it should have been a done deal, right? A month, and then here's your stamp, and off you go. Best of luck. You got a year, 3 years, or 5 years. But that hasn't been the case.
Can I jump in?
Sure, absolutely.
So most of what you said is accurate, except you just have to have all the boxes checked, and you don't have all the boxes checked, and that's, I think, why you fell into that circle of indecision.
Okay.
And it strikes me as very reasonable if you're going to be coming into Japan. You live in Canada, out in the prairie, and you're coming into Japan. You got kids and stuff?
Yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so you got the whole disaster, and you're coming into Japan. There's a social network here that the government pays for. They pay for the health benefits and the public education and that sort of thing, right?
Yes.
And if you don't have a source of income that convinces them, that's one of the boxes, that you're not going to be a drain onto society or wherever it is that you decide to live, you're not going to be sucking up on those social services because you're unemployed. They're not going to do that. They're not going to click that box. So you do have to have some source. And like, for example, Chinese going to Canada, all you have to do is show a very healthy bank book. Here in Japan, that doesn't apply. You really do need to have, what they mean, I think, by sponsor is, do you have, somebody that's, paying you for what you're doing here so you can pay rent and, keep the kids fed and, that sort of thing. That's my take on it.
Yeah. And Timothy, you would have been 100% right in the first case because that was left out. And in the second instance, I did, again, a bit of digging around, and the minimum you need to show to be accepted for a spouse visa is 3 million yen. That's the minimum. And what we would bring would easily cover us for 2 years of living without any work. So but I hear what you're saying. Like, I think you're right. It's not just hey, I'm coming over here with a suitcase full of money, I can take care of myself. It's more, are you going to be, you've found gainful employment.
That's right. Are you going to be productive here?
You're paying taxes, and you're absolutely right. The thing is, I end up being in a catch-22 because 9 of the last 12 companies I've talked to, we get to a final round and you don't have a spouse visa, you're not here. Sorry, it's not progressing. So I'm just in this like as they call it. I'm in the middle of nowhere and just trying to figure out a path. And again, this is not just my story. I think there's people like me that are struggling with this, and I'm not entirely sure how to get out of it.
I just wanted to jump in.
Go ahead.
So, and Yuka, thank you for your questions. Timothy, great points. And of course, Maya, you guys, I can't really add too much, but there's a lot of people that might not be familiar with the concept of a spouse visa. So I want to give you a contrast just to show how extraordinary Colin's situation is. In 2017, we went through the process in Hawaii. And we went through the consulate, which was on a different island. So that was a pain, but we had to actually go there. They were extremely helpful. Of course, we did things by the book. We went online. We made sure all the paperwork was filled out. They were so helpful. There was absolutely no problem for me getting the visa. The only thing, the people at our consulate, they were mad at Japan because they only gave us a 1-year spousal visa, and we've been married for 35 years at the time. So that was the only thing. I mean, shame, poor us, right? But it was easy, and they were helpful. And even the income, I didn't have to show guarantee. I had to get a letter from a company that said, yeah, we could see us giving that amount of income to Tim the first year. And of course, I'm retired now, so I had that going for me. But it wasn't very strict. And so when I listened to what, Colin's going through, that's why this struck me very hard, because Yuka mentioned it's a matter of timing, and that is right. That is spot on, because after I heard Colin's story, my first thought was, holy shit, what if I went to Japan a year and a half from later, I'd be in Colin's situation. And with that in mind, that's why I like hearing Timothy and Maya's, the politics, you can't separate it. And so I always get a perspective from them that, kind of doesn't make you happy necessarily, but at least you kind of see where it's all coming from, right? So
well, and and Tim, you're right. Like it's not a the door is not closed, right? I mean, I wouldn't be talking about this and trying to figure out every possible way to get there. I just find, and it's kind of back to the topic of this, right? Why come back to Japan? Well, our past talk on Clubhouse, there's so many positive reasons to go to Japan. I still believe, and there's so much value that can be gained from people in this third category, which I find myself. Yet it's just not being matched up with what's actually happening. And Timothy made an excellent point, right? Bureaucracy is bureaucracy. They don't move at the speed of light. They move at the speed of moss. So something needs to change because it's like this for me. I guarantee you there's other people that are also dealing with it and with less perspective maybe.
So, Colin, what is your plan? I mean, either you wait out, like you said. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I learned a new phrase. You said catch-20. I think in the US we say catch-22. So in the US we added 2 more. But anyway,
no, I've always been bad at math, Yuka. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Anyway, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to,
No, you're fine. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Anyway, so what can you do though? Because you said you are getting multiple job offers, right? Mm-hmm. Can you just prove that as a source of income?
Yeah, no, I've had that discussion as well. And a job offer, it has to be an official job offer, a contract. So you can't say, I've been popular with a number of companies, they really want me. It goes back to what Timothy said about being, a stand-up contributor to society. So an offer is an offer is an offer, but unless it's a contract, it just doesn't count. So to your question about what am I going to do now? I'm trying to look for a coin to flip it. No, I think, I don't know, like my wife and kids are really eager to get back. They miss their family. And frankly, if the only avenue open for me is to go as a tourist and then, by happenstance, get an interview and get offered a job while I'm in Japan, then that's just what I'll have to do. But it doesn't seem like the official route is working for myself and likely others. So maybe that's just something I don't pick. It's a good question.
Well, Colin, there is also a new option which has been on the table for maybe a couple of years now. So there is a possibility. I think that now there is actually a door where people can come as startup founders. Mm-hmm. So, and then it gives them, it's not exactly a priority, but if you can come up with a plan with a startup here in Japan, so your documentation and application, they will be actually put and they will be viewed as separate category. So I don't know how appealing this is to you, of course, because it's not easy to set up a company and get it work and so on. But still, this is one more option which may be there to consider.
Yeah, no, and Maya, that's a really good reminder. And I have looked in the past at the highly skilled professional area. They have they have their point system that they've borrowed from other countries like Singapore, and it works fairly well. What I'm trying to do, I suppose, even in this call, is kind of shed the light on how difficult what should be the easiest path has been. And I think there's a lot of people that may or may not be in similar shoes to me that wouldn't even have that option. Like the highly skilled professional, when I've gone through the points test, I easily score over what is required. I could do it. I think about others and wonder what they're doing and their plans to get back to Japan, and it's disappointing, to put it simply.
Right. We have another comment here in the room chat.
Perfect.
Hannah. Yes, I was in the same boat, my partner, and I got a spousal visa for my Canadian. For him, he's a Canadian citizen.
Oh, Hannah, yes, good comment, Hannah. Yeah,
I believe having a guarantor was the key. So obviously, this is a big, yes.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. I just would have thought, being 40-something years old and a professional, I wouldn't need someone to vouch for me, but maybe that's the case.
Sorry, George, can I quickly ask who can be a guarantor? Like any signature on the paper, or they have to show the bank statement?
They typically have. I mean, Hannah might be able to answer, but from what I know, the guarantor has to be someone with a specific connection to you, with a permanent residence. I don't think they provide any financial information, but they vouch for you and they are willing to quote unquote care for you if it's ever required.
Oh, okay.
Your
Yeah.
in-laws couldn't do that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, both of my in-laws have passed away. Both of them during the pandemic. So my wife's parents died in the last 2 years, and there's no one there to do it in that instance. Which is another reason why we
I'm
wanted
so
to.
sorry to
I'm
hear
sorry
that.
for that. Yes.
No, thank you guys. No, that's one of the key reasons, right? So that it makes it a bit of a more a charged issue for me, right? But
Yes.
maybe Hannah knows. Hannah, do you have anything else to say? Maybe in a chat. Who did you use for your guarantor?
Or Hannah, you can share that in the chat, or you can come up and
That's
talk
fine.
with us here. Yes.
And in the meantime, if she's shy, which is okay, it looks like Jorge's joined us.
Yes.
Or
I
George.
believe-
Yeah,
Can you
welcome.
guys, yeah, I'm Jorge. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for all the very insightful information and discussion here. So, for a little bit of context, I'm here in San Antonio, Texas, in the U.S. right now. But I used to work for a big Japanese company, and I spent some time working in Japan, and then I was sent back to South America to set up a plant. And then I worked in some other countries, and then I could go back to Japan several times. And to make a long story short, for the last 3 years, my business plans to go to Japan were canceled because of COVID. Now, one thing that occurs to me is, aren't we kind of overlooking kind of the elephant in the room here? Now, we say, okay, why is Japan closed to tourists? Well, I mean, some would say, well, there's a lot of bureaucracy in Japan, which is true. Well, they don't want you to be a public charge, to the Japan government. You need to have your own resources. That may also be true. But if you follow what happened in Japan with immigration and treatment of refugees and people dying in immigration facilities, and let's not forget that Japan was totally closed for 265 years in the Sakoku period, right? In the Edo period.
Exactly.
So, I mean, and there is a one single thing that would explain everything that we are going through right now, which is a big chunk of the Japanese population and the Japanese government just don't like foreigners. They just don't like foreigners. And they don't feel obligated to open the borders to us because they don't believe we are the same, So isn't this like the elephant in the room that we kind of dance around and we never mention? What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's yes. Okay.
Jorge, I'm you know what? I will say I agree with you. I'm not sure I'm not sure I'd use the same words, but those are your words. Speak your mind. But what I would add is one of the reasons why I find this so challenging is what we're being told is not happening in practice. So if you don't want certain groups of people to come in, you don't make comments about, we need foreign talent, we need this, we need that. That some people do. I mean, you're right. The vast majority don't. People keep very quiet. It's a very cultural thing, right? You don't speak your mind unless you are asked for it, and then you keep it very brief. But that's what I get challenged with, is I can see a gap and I can see a value that we have that we can use to fill the gap. And yet everything seems to be to discourage us from going and doing it. So I hear what you're saying. Again, I'm not so sure I'd go that strongly, but it's not something that I have experienced. So it's certainly there. Anyone else?
Yeah,
So-
I think the way.
Yeah, we all have opinion about this.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject, but I guess the way I would acknowledge that absolutely there are structural barriers in place to preclude foreigners from entering the country, and there are historical precedents. Okay, but that said, and so acknowledging that, I would also say, as someone who moved here in a different time, the pre-COVID era, I felt very grateful for all the help I was given to get my visa here by Japanese people, even some of them in the government. And now that I'm here and I deal with Japanese, the human beings, rather than the they, I feel very welcome by many, many people. Not everybody, but you know what? Enough people where I love living here. And so, how would I say? Yes, Japan has its issues on that front. But I also think there's another reality, and I think it's evolving. And I think Timothy talking about outside pressure, the more we engage directly as human beings, to me, that's the best way to change hearts and minds here. I don't know if that added anything, but that's my perspective.
Yeah. Sorry, Maya. With all due respect, Jorge, I'm sorry. And again, I think I mispronounced your name twice. I apologize. So, I think it's what you have said. It's not wrong. However, though, I think it's, like a Japanese, they don't hate you. I should use the word we. We don't hate you. We may not accept you 100%, but we will welcome you, though. I think that's how I feel. And then because you have said that you lived in US, I'm in US at this point. I don't think I ever accepted 100% here, but the people tend to be nice to me. So I think it's we do look differently. So, but we just live together in harmony. That's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuka. Yes, this is a very touchy subject, and I sometimes, not just sometimes, I quite often hear, the opinion that the Japanese don't like foreigners expressed straight like this, and yeah, I was, when I came to Japan, I used to think and feel the same, but it was 21 years ago already, and then suddenly, it is exactly what Yuka said. Wherever you go, if you don't live in your native country, you're bound to, or you're just destined to feel that way in certain situations, and feel that coming, from the local people in that country. So the first thing which I want to say is that it is not just limited to Japan. So I think that as foreigners, because of a lot of prejudice, before the Second World War and after the Second World War, because we have these biases which we hold because of the history of Japan, which we already know, we kind of expect to be disliked. And I know that many people will disagree with me. And this is an unconscious bias, which a lot of foreigners who come to Japan to live here and work here have. We don't hold it consciously. This is just with us. The point which I'm trying to make is that I felt the same way. But also, as a foreigner, I have realized, and I believe that Atami team, and maybe some other people in the room will agree with me, is that we need to get over our own biases first and approach, the people here as human beings, and understand how important it is that first and before everything else, we are humans, the people who live in Japan, the local, the native Japanese, and the foreigners who come to Japan. Before being, before coming from different nationalities and different cultures, we are humans. And so we all have the same feeling. We all have the same fears. We all have the same, struggles in life. So, and I have realized for me that if we understand this, we the foreigners, and get over our own biases, probably it will be easier for us to accept the way and to accept and understand why the Japanese are afraid of having too many foreigners, let's say, or have, somebody from overseas come and suddenly start living here. And this is natural human fear, right? Because we don't know their culture. We don't, and of course, when I was back home in Bulgaria, we had foreigners there, but there were the same feelings, among many of the Bulgarians. They didn't express the feelings in that way. I believe that here in Japan, and you can call me Japan apologist as much as you want. I don't mind this. But here in Japan, because of the way, the culture and how things are expressed and people's feelings are actually not expressed, and we tend to feel that this is passive aggression, or, you can call it even in a different way. But still, I believe that, we for the foreigners, we need to get over our own biases first and approach the Japanese and human beings and show them our human side as well, because we are all just this people.
The only hearts and minds that I changed here are people who I engage with, become friends with, or am related to. We interact, we do kind things for each other, and they change. And I realize that, I feel nothing but love. But they needed to actually meet a real human being foreigner to understand it. That's how I look at it. So I agree with everything you said, Maya. Go ahead, Yuka.
No, sorry. We don't mean to sort of, completely disagree with you, Jorge. I just wanted to, make that clear. By the way, Maya, what is the word? Japan apologist? Is that your creation or like a,
No,
yeah,
no.
that's a good word.
No, it's not my creation.
No, it's been around for a while.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think I wanted to put my anthropologist hat on for just a second and kind of try to sit in the middle, which is typically where I like to try to be. But what I wanted to add to what other people have said is, and I think Maya used a really good word, passive. And I know, and I'll shift this away from Japan for a second. Working and living overseas for 20 years, you learned I learned a lot of different things, and I'm sure everybody here has their own stories and they've learned their own lessons and have their great experiences as well. But one of the things that I learned, particularly when living in Europe, was it was the speed of how things were done and how direct people were, right? And we can go into all the Hofstede cultural stuff if you want to, but let's just stay out of that for a second. So when I moved back to Canada 5-6 years ago now, it drove me nuts. And it shouldn't, because you would think, well, hey, like I'm back home. And I mean, yes, there's a reverse culture shock and all that kind of thing. But one of the things that I noticed was the amount of times it would take for me to talk to someone before I would get a clear yes or no. And Canada on a scale is in the middle between like a very direct country and Japan, which is not. And so I think at times when we're talking about issues in Japan that we don't understand or that we're struggling to figure out, or a variety of other things, what happens is sometimes we would like to say or be more comfortable with, well, why don't you just tell me? Just tell me directly. Tell me why you don't want me to come in. Tell me why I'm not good enough for this. Stop giving me these indirect, passive, aggressive, whatever answers. Just say it clearly. And that pushes us over into one area where maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's not the reason why the applications for myself didn't pass. Maybe, like Timothy made a very good point. Maybe there's something that I missed. It's an easy thing to say no. There was a comment in the discussion that said, Japan doesn't have to open its doors and invite foreigners in. It's its own country. It can do whatever it wants. That's absolutely right. So they can do things and they can decide things however they think is best. But part of it is, us trying to figure out what something's going on based on the way we think that they should be done, decided, and talked about. And so that's kind of the one little thing. I think, Maya, again, you made a really good comment about passive. And there's passive, and then there's the opposite of that, and there's direct, and there's the opposite of that, and that's how some of these things tend to boil up to the surface. So hopefully this helps clear it up for a few of us, but maybe we'll go back to the discussion and see if anyone's got any other comments.
Yeah, if you don't mind me just making a comment on what you said, Colin, about, we foreigners, especially the Westerners who don't come from Asia, right? Because the Asian cultures have something in common about being indirect. But in the Western world, we love that, people being direct to us, and we love being direct to others. So, and this is a very big point, which I think that we need to understand and also accept that this is how the Asian cultures are. So by saying this, I'm not trying, to say that all the Asian cultures are the same, but they have this common point. And if you understand that they are indirect and they don't like opposing, other people directly, so that it just, lets them know that, or helps them in their understanding that this is the way to preserve peace, okay, peace. So if we know that, and if we accept that, we will be able to approach what happens here with more understanding and be more strategic about this and about how we actually try, to approach things. Of course, I'm not trying to excuse what has happened to you and to other people, who haven't been able to come back to and see their families and move back to Japan during these 2 years, because this is unexcusable. So, and once again, bureaucracy is different from what is going on, on just let's say ordinary level or among people, right? But we need to accept the fact that the cultures here, and the Japanese culture is, there is no direct confrontation. And that's why things are expressed in a passive way. That's why there is a lot of, just going around and, what do you say in English? Beating around the bush?
Yes.
Yes. So that's how it is. And this is the reality. So, and as long as we come here and want to, to be accepted here, I believe that we need to be strategic about this and accept it for what it is. And I'm sorry, I'm trying, to tell you what to do, and this is not my, my goal. But I believe that as people who want to come and live here, this is us who need to adjust, to adapt, to how things are in this country. If for me personally, and this is, I'm telling you, this is my way of thinking after 20 years of living here. This was not how I thought when I came to Japan. So I can say that I have evolved and learned a lot. And of course, I can tell any Japanese, back home in Bulgaria, I want you to be direct when you talk to me. But here I cannot do this. So that's my point. So I'm just, I would love to hear other people's opinions.
So thank you for being a Japan apologist. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I just want to use this word. But Japan, in my humble opinion, Japan doesn't have a luxury of beating around the bush. Again, in my humble opinion, Japan need any producing productive population it can get. I mean, at this rate of population decrease, Japan will disappear in 40 years. So, but I think it's, people are slowly realizing to that. And then it's unfortunate we had a COVID, but I hope things going to come around sooner than later for everyone's sake.
Yeah, I always feel like Japan is hurting itself when they do these things. And again, some of it's just baked in prejudices that, we all know the history, right? But I agree with you. Like, Japan would really benefit by making it easier for people like Colin to come here. And
I think so.
I think so too. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I think that's kind of the crux of it, right? Is that it's. I don't see this as like, hey, I'm the best thing since sliced bread or whatever you want to say. Why are you denying me? It's like their opportunity is my opportunity. Like, this is a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned. But if things take time, they take time. But time also makes eyes look in other places. So yeah, it's a tough call, guys.
Sorry.
I'll go.
I want to ask the question, Timothy Langley. So is he still there? But anyway, I'm going to ask anyway. Thank you. Sorry. The June 1st, the number of the foreigners who can enter the country is going to double, right? Is it going to help Colin, or it doesn't make any difference yet?
No, it is going to help, assuming he falls into that category. So it will double, and that is for business people, for teachers, for students, and that sort of thing. It doesn't quite include tourists. So once they begin to include tourists, that 20,000 per day is going to be quickly exceeded. And by the way, the 20,000 per day only includes a certain category, because there are other people that come in that aren't included in those categories. For example, Ukrainian refugees. They're not included in those categories. But I think once, like Maya said, once the election is over, a lot of things are going to happen. A lot of things are going to be revealed. A lot of things are going to change. And not all of them are good. A lot of the news that comes out will be things that have been held back because we want to win the election first, and we'll give you the bad news later. So there's a lot of that that we can anticipate too.
Well, Colin, you have to wait for 10 days? I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, is it 10 days, 10 months, or 4 years? It's kind of, I agree with everything Timothy said. I think there's going to be yay moments and there's going to be oh no moments when the election happens. But I don't know, I used to be a political and risk consultant, and whenever we used to read things about Japan, whenever it was election coming, the results were almost predictable beforehand, and there wasn't a whole lot of shocking developments. So I'm hoping this won't be the case this time, but it's given me that same kind of feeling. Am I wrong, Timothy?
No, I think you're right. I think just things are changing at a structural level, not just in Japan, but globally. So we're never going to go back to where we were pre-COVID, although it's nice now and you're going to events and, well, you're not experiencing it yet, but, Japan is socially, it's opening up. I went to an event last night. There were 60 people, no masks, drinking and chatting. It was really nice. It was really, and you're finding more of these. But we're moving very rapidly into a new kind of situation. And the rules haven't been quite defined yet. And the way business is done, the way people socially interact. There's also another thing that's going on. Somebody's at my door. Another thing that's going on is this appreciation and this weight and the influence of social media in our society. It's being critically evaluated now, and there's no replacement vehicle for that. But it's coming, and it's coming in a very big way. So, kind of like if you remember how different things were before the iPhone came out, and then the iPhone, and you had the computer in your hand and the search function. I think we're moving very quickly into that kind of paradigm too. Sorry for going on and on.
Yes, that's interesting, and I would love you to elaborate on this once you open or answer the door call, if you can, of course. Yes.
Oh no, it was one of the staff coming in. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, but there is a lot. Basically, the world is not going back to the state of the state without social media, of course. And there is another thing. A lot of people say that the social media will actually once again divide the world into categories, into let's say people, tribes, and whatever you say. But one thing which I was thinking about is that, as Yuka said, Japan is going to actually benefit a lot by opening its doors and by becoming more direct. However, there is another thing which we as foreigners, the foreigners who live here and the foreigners who are coming, actually moving to Japan, is that just be strategic and instead, of being too direct and telling the Japanese what to do, actually, try to turn the tables in a more subtle way, so that there is basically confrontation is not how things work here. So I do believe that approaching every challenge in the Japanese way would be more productive. It will take longer, of course, to solve a problem or to find a solution to the challenge, but it will be definitely the better way and more productive way to do so. So, Hannah, thank you for coming up. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for organizing this. When I put the hand up, we were talking about, I think Colin was saying, and you were just mentioning that, how can we be more direct to communicate in Japan? And I tried many ways to almost be direct to Japanese people, and none of them went well. And the reason I want to share here is that I myself have this experience of when you're being direct or the other person is direct to you or at you, you have this a body reaction of a shutdown, and I can't hear what they're saying anymore. So hoping that they're going to be more direct and more not around the bush, I guess. But it is, Colin, you're saying too, it takes time, and I think it takes more than we hope.
Hannah, if I could give you a high five, I would. I think that's a fantastic comment, because it is exactly the reason why I try very hard to, whenever I'm talking to anyone I know who's Japanese or from similar cultures, I spend half of my time kind of summarizing what they've told me to make them feel like I understand what they're saying before I share what I am. So it's like this middle ground. Because you're right. I know she's accustomed to it now, but talking to my wife, her family, our friends, if you come out direct, you almost get the shoulders come together. People get hunched. They're almost in defensive mode. And you're right. They shut down. They don't want to talk at all. They're just feeling like they're being not attacked is a strong word, but they feel like someone's coming at them, and it doesn't work. There's a whole lot of nuance in the middle. So I agree. You're very well put. Excellent point.
Yeah. Sorry, Maya, go ahead.
No, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for coming up and making the point, because it's very important. And it's 9:00, so I wonder if anybody who is on stage or who is in the audience has other comments or observations to share with us before we proceed with wrapping the room up.
Just my final comment. I want to thank Jorge, and it is my hope that we can get people like Jorge and Colin, just talented people here. And I'm rooting for you. I wish I had the answers, but I got a lot of insights just listening to everybody in this room. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to say, don't give up. If you want to come to, or if you want to move to Japan, I know that it's difficult. It takes time. Sometimes it doesn't seem logical at all, but please don't give up, because Japan needs you. Well, Japan may not realize that at the moment, but Japan needs you. Yes.
They're not getting rid of me yet. Go ahead, Yuka.
If Japan gives you, another hard time, come back and tell us, okay?
Hey, I take it as a positive challenge. It's just like trying to figure out a puzzle, right?
Yeah, and
Like,
it has been a good learning for me. So thank you.
Like, how do I need to do it? And I wanted to say one thing that real quick for everybody. At the end of every week, I have a kind of a rule that I set where I look back and I go, did I have a really good or a couple of really good conversations? And did I learn something? Did something make me uncomfortable? Did something whatever? And this is one of those. And so I wanted to say, I know a lot of people may or may not agree with what Jorge said, but I appreciate the fact that he was honest and he came up and said, look, I see this. This is what I think. Let's talk about it. And we did it in a very polite, open conversation. And yeah, there was a couple times even where I was trying to think of what I was going to say, where it was a little uncomfortable in my chair, but that's a good thing, right? That means we're looking at topics that need to be delved or need to be explored. And the only way we're going to get to some kind of an answer is if we do that. So thank you, everybody, for making that possible.
Thank you for saying that, Colin. I agree. These are precious conversations, and it's refreshing for us to exchange opinions and trying to offer nuanced takes on the reality, that rather than looking at things in black and white, which we all tend to do.
So when can we do this again?
Oh, yeah, schedule with Maya. Open invitation for you, buddy.
We'll figure it out. Thank you. I'm not jumping the gun here. Yeah.
But definitely these conversations are very important. And even though I said that when you come to Japan, move here, you need to be strategic and understand that direct talk does not open doors. It is important that we have these conversations. And of course, Jorge, I'm very grateful to you for coming up and just speaking your mind, because that's how actually we get the conversation going. And as Tim and Colin said, we need to talk about these topics. And the more people talk about them, and I mean the bigger number of people talk about them, the more often people talk about them, the higher the chances are that more people will be aware of what is going on, and more people will be actually willing to do something to solve these problems. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to everybody who listened to us. You dedicated your 1 hour of this Thursday morning to the conversation. Thank you to everybody who also shared their opinions and observations and experiences in the chat room. So this room, the recording is going to stay on Clubhouse, and you can listen to parts of it or to the whole of it after we close the room. It will be available also on YouTube at Japan Expert Insights. There. So if you do a search on Clubhouse, on YouTube, you'll be able to find also other sessions available there. Of course, if you are interested in certain topics which you want to talk about, please don't hesitate to reach out to Tim Sullivan or to me, either here on Clubhouse or on LinkedIn, so that we can talk about them. We are open to suggestions and ideas. And of course, we're looking forward to having you here again. We also have a very fun, podcast with Tim Sullivan, and you can see some of the people who joined us today there. So it is called Unplanned Japan. It is available on YouTube. Also, if you follow us on LinkedIn, you will get notifications about every new episode, which is uploaded every week. The episodes are very short, just about between 2 and 3 minutes, and they give you some bite-sized wisdom or experiences about living in Japan or working here in Japan. So thank you very much again. We're looking forward to having you here next week. Next week we're going to talk about Web 3.0. Yay! Yes,
that sounds excellent.
Right, waiting for that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have Jovan, who is well versed in that field. So if you want to learn a little bit more, join us again next week. Of course. In the meantime, on Sunday morning at 8:20, Timothy Langley just walks us through the latest events in Japanese politics. So if you listen to those sessions, you will be able to get a deeper understanding of why certain things are happening, and you can get also more knowledge about public policies here in Japan, which are important for you who live here or who work here. So this is all for today. Once again, I wish you a great Thursday, a successful reminder of the week, and we'll see you next week again. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and staying with us today. We will be on air next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, you can follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, we're looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you.